The lights. What is the Fine, sir. I'll take this. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. First thing, if audio and video both are fine, please let me know before we begin. It's all good. Wonderful. All right. Wonderful. So let's start. I'm sorry for the delay, but there are some family medical emergencies because of which it has incapacitated me to come on time and deliver all the lectures on time. I'm very sorry for that. Yeah. So yesterday we had started with our discussion on nanotechnology. And in nanotechnology, we discussed some of the basics of nanotechnology. We discussed about some of the key, uh, you can say, particles or materials which are nanomaterials and how they are useful. So we discussed about fullerenes, we discussed about carbon nanotubes, graphenes. So that is where we are going to continue from. So one last particle that we need to understand are quantum dots. Now, in terms of quantum dots, first and foremost, let's try to understand what we mean by quantum dots. And then let's move on to understanding of some of the application areas of quantum dots and nanotechnology in general. Now, one thing about quantum dots that I believe that for this year's examination, they are going to be very, very important because 2023 Nobel Prize in Chemistry has been given for the discovery and synthesis of quantum dots. So that's why, from this perspective, it becomes a very, very important topic for this year's examination, at least for prelims. If they don't ask you in the prelims, then in that case, I would say that it then becomes important for your mains examination. But it remains important because now it has the Nobel Prize in its name. So, what are quantum dots? Let's try to understand that first. Quantum dots, right? These are the two words that you have. So, quantum and dots. So, why quantum dots? So, quantum because it has certain quantum properties. Now, quantum properties, in a manner, you can say these are special properties that subatomic particles like electrons, protons, neutrons, and other subatomic particles have. So, those are quantum properties. They behave according to the laws of quantum mechanics or quantum physics. That's why the word quantum. Now, what are these properties? We'll go to the chapter of IT and communication, and there we'll have a basic understanding of what do we mean by quantum or quantum science or quantum physics. Then the second term is dot. Now, why dot? Because these are particles which are very, very small and they are spherical. All right, as you can see on the screen, that these are spherical images, right? Now, because these are spherical and they are very small, that's why they are like dots for us. That's why the word dot has been used. Now, what's special about these quantum dots? The importance or the important property of quantum dots is that they when ultraviolet light, this basically is ultraviolet light, when ultraviolet light falls on them, then they emit different colors, and what color they would emit, that depends on the size of the particle. All right, it depends on the size of the particle what kind of color they are going to emit. So that's why that becomes very, very crucial part of the entire thing, that we see that this quantum dot basically is able to emit different colors based on the size of quantum dot. The bigger dot, as you can see, they would emit reddish colors, and the smaller ones, they would emit blue color. So now that is something that depends on what kind of, what is the size of the quantum dot, and understand why it depends on the size. That why size of quantum dot is important. Now, if you know, for example, when we talk about the white light, we say that white light has seven component colors, correct? Seven component colors. How do we represent them? What are these seven component colors? Yes, Suman, you are correct. What are these seven component colors? Nilanjana correct, Anil correct, Rishu, Shimna correct, Vishant, Satyapal correct. So you understand that this is the pattern, Vibgyor. So Vibgyor meaning it is violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. Now, when it comes to these seven colors or seven components of the white light, this indicates the smallest wavelength. You see this when you have the smallest wavelength, and you see red when you have the largest wavelength. All right, smallest and the largest wavelength. So from that perspective is what we see how these things become important, smallest to the largest wavelength. Now, in these cases, when it comes to this pattern that is Vibgyor, what we understand is that similarly, when we look at the quantum dots also, you can see that the smallest of the quantum dots, they have blue color, and the largest of the quantum dots, they have red color. So that is where they are also deriving their colors from. So that's why quantum dots. And when it comes to these optical properties, understand where these optical properties are important application wise. So that's why when UV light hits the surface, they emit light of various colors, and these colors, the emitted color, the emitted color depends on the size of the quantum dots. Right? The emitted color is dependent on the size of the quantum dot. So application wise, they are important for photovoltaic devices, in LEDs, in the medical field, and they also can act as photocatalyst in light driven chemical conversion of water into hydrogen. That is, they are also important when we are trying to generate or derive hydrogen, when we are trying to produce hydrogen from water. So that is also where they are important. Now, LEDs, in LEDs there is QLED. I don't know whether you have seen the advertisements, especially if you look at the advertisements by Samsung advertises a lot of these QLED TVs. They say that they have QLED TVs, and the QLED TVs that Samsung has, or many of the other companies also have, uh, about them, if you look at their advertisements, they say that they would give you better color contrasts. That QLED TVs will give you better color contrasts compared to any other normal LED TV. So why exactly are they saying that? Because quantum dots are being used, and quantum dots are being used to light the TV panel, the LED panel, and that's why TV panel or this LED panel will be able to generate better colors, much more enhanced colors as compared to any other normal LED television. So that's why this is what they also advertise about the QLED TVs. So that's why in LEDs or in electronics we see that they become crucial. So in this manner, we see that quantum dots have all these application areas. Now, overall, when we look at applications of nanotechnology, there are various different applications. So, for example, in the medical field, we see that they can be used They can be used for drug delivery. So for example, they can be used, you have nano gold particles, you also have carbon nanotubes, which can be used for drug delivery. So we had discussed, if you remember, that targeted drug delivery can be done using carbon nanotubes. So that's why in medical field they are useful. Then they can be used in tissue engineering, again something that we discussed in the context of that one question that was a controversial question in UPSC CSE 2020. So carbon nanotubes can be used there. In disease diagnostics also we see that they are useful, where carbon nanotubes are important. At the same time we see that graphene also can play a role in these cases. Then nano carriers for eye surgery. Now these nano carriers, because these are nano machines, you can say, which can be used for eye surgery, and that's why we have nano sized machines that can be used. And in making nano flares in breast cancer treatment, where we make the use of quantum dots. So in all these cases we see that there are all these different application areas in medical field. Similarly, in the energy aspects, we see that it can address shortage of fossil fuels. Again, carbon nanotubes can be very, very crucial here. At the same time, nanowires can be useful, because nanowires will be able to improve the efficiency of energy devices. So that's why they can be useful. Then nano generators for wind energy production. All right, nano generators for wind energy production. So in this case also we see that carbon nanotubes can be useful. Then in nanotech solar cells also we see that carbon nanotubes can be used. In QLEDs we discussed that quantum dots can be used. And then nano catalyst for hydrogen production is again where quantum dots become useful. So in energy production there are all these uses. Then after that, in food and agriculture we see that silver nanoparticles, or in general we have metal ion nanoparticles. We have metal ion nanoparticles that can be useful. Then antimicrobial nanoemulsions can be useful. So that's why we can actually make the use of a nanoemulsions. Then titanium dioxide is something that is used as antimicrobial agent. Then we have bioindicators for pathogen and pesticides. Then we have bioconjugated nanoparticles for enhancing the agricultural productivity. And nanofertilizers also are used, where we see that very small sized particles are used. For example, the particles will be very small, and hence better absorption can take place. Better absorption into the soil. Better absorption into the soil. So that's why we see that there are all these ways in which in food and agriculture this nanotechnology can be useful. Then in environment, for water purification, we can make the use of graphene largely. So graphene can be used, but even carbon nanotubes are useful. Then in the same is the case in air purification as well. So there also they can be useful. Then metal oxide nanocrystals. So metal oxide nanocrystals, they can also be used. So the same silver and gold nanoparticles, they can be useful, improving the air quality again, because filtration can be done much better with nanoparticles. And nanosensors for detection of pathogens. So that's why environmentally also they have a lot of different use. Then in making nano circuits, we can make the use of nanowires. So nanowires are useful here. Then in making magnetic RAM, again, we make the use of nanowires. Then carbon nanotubes in electronics, they are very, very useful. So we had discussed, for example, they can be used in foldable devices. They can be used in foldable devices, and they can also improve energy efficiency. All right, and then after that, in foldable displays they can be useful. So here we know that carbon nanotubes and both graphene at the same time, both can be useful. Then they can be used to make single electron transistors where nanowires can play a very, very important role, and reducing energy consumption altogether, where even quantum dots are useful. Even quantum dots are useful. So when it comes to this particular scenario, quantum dots especially, we discussed about the QLEDs. And QLEDs actually are able to run on lesser electricity or lesser energy as compared to the amount of energy that you need for running any normal LED television. So that's why they would be able to save some power. They are able to uh, give you the same output with lesser energy requirement. Then in the industries, in aircraft manufacturing, in construction industry, in textiles, in all these cases also we see that carbon nanotubes and graphene, they actually can play a very, very important role in strengthening the material, in improving the strength of the material. Both of these particles can be very, very useful. And then from space perspective, we see that carbon nanotubes can be used to reduce the spacecraft waste. We discussed about space elevators also, and there also carbon nanotubes can be useful. So there are a lot of ways in which we see that applications of nanotechnology can be seen. Even in defense, for example, in intelligence gathering, we can make the use of nanowires, because nanowires can make storage devices which are very, very small in size, and that's why they can be used. In military vests, carbon nanotubes can be used. In wound care, we discussed about tissue engineering using, again, carbon nanotubes. So that's why there are all these different ways in which applications of nanotechnology can be seen. So if you see, this is one question that was asked in your 2015 paper. It's a simple question. Try to answer this. I am launching the poll also for you. Please read the question and mark the correct answer. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, so 63% of you have marked C, which is the correct answer. And I see the confusion because many of you have marked A. So let me discuss this. With reference to the use of nanotechnology in health sector, which of the following statements is or are correct? First is targeted drug delivery is made possible by nanotechnology. We discussed this already in multiple cases, so one definitely is correct. Second is nanotechnology can largely contribute to gene therapy. Now, this is first of all a very generalized statement. And again, most of the cases when you have generalized statement like this, these are correct statements. Also, when it comes to the use of nanotechnology in gene therapy, it can be done, and it can be done in a very similar manner. Just how targeted drug delivery can be done with the help of nanotechnology, where nano machines can carry the drug to the required location. Similarly, gene therapy, gene modification can also be carried out with the help of nanotechnology, with the help of these nanoparticles. And the 2016 Nobel Prize in chemistry was actually given in this particular scenario. So that's why uh, in both these cases, this is actually possible. So correct answer, that's why, will be both 1 and 2. Also read this question. I'm launching the poll for you. Please mark the answers. Hmm. So first, so as I see here that some of you have marked A and many of you have also marked C. So first statement is carbon fibers. Now, when we say carbon fibers, meaning that these are carbon made materials, right? So fibers made of carbon, which you can say even uh, every particle that we have discussed, like even carbon nanotubes or graphene, all these can be called as carbon fibers. So largely we are talking about carbon nanotubes here. So carbon fibers are used in the manufacture of components used in automobiles and aircrafts. So this is correct. Anyway, we have discussed about this, that this is something that happens anyway. Second is carbon fibers once used cannot be recycled. Now, this basically is not correct. That saying that they cannot be recycled is wrong. The largely thing is that these are very strong strong materials, correct? And because these are strong materials, we see that it actually becomes easier for us to think of recycling rather than just throwing them away. So that's why they very easily can be recycled. All right, they can actually be recycled. So that's why just remember that they are materials that they can be recycled. So this is wrong. So correct answer, that's why, will be A, that is one only. Now coming to what we have done in India. So Indian initiatives in nanotechnology. Now, when you look at nanotechnology, you will understand that there are a lot of things that have happened, and many of the things that have happened, they have happened in the recent past. As I told you that in the last 30 odd years, 30-35 years is where we have made big progress in nanotechnology. Now, India took some time to catch up with what was happening in the world, because we saw that world started doing a lot in case of nanotechnology before we did something in India. Initially, it was slow. That first time promoted research on nanomaterial in ninth five-year plan. Then there was this program on nanomaterial science and devices. So there are all these things that we see that happened in the last few years, but these were very insignificant, you can say, efforts in India. There were, I mean, you can say individual efforts and scientists, they were working on it. But 2007 is when the things change. In 2007, we see that India started Nano Mission. Nano Mission, a mission on nanoscience and technology. This is something that was launched. Now, what we see is that the 11th five-year plan, it is something that categorically mentioned projects to create high value and impact on socio-economic delivery involving nanomaterial and nano devices in health and diseases. So what we basically see is that here, for the first time, India starts working on nanotechnology and understanding how exactly can nanotechnology help us in various different sectors, especially the sectors that are very deeply intertwined with lives of people all across. So that is basically what we see. Now, in this context, we see that Nano Mission has five basic components. There are five components that this Nano Mission has. So as you can see, first is basic research promotion. Now, this basic research promotion was about providing basic infrastructure to the people so that they can start working, or providing basic, you can say, support to people so that they can start working on it. So, for example, centers of excellence were created, or funding of research was being done. So these kind of efforts, which were very very crucial in the context of people getting, or let's say scientists getting what they need to start working in the field of nanotechnology. This is basically where we see that they start putting some amount of effort in nanotechnology. And then after that, we see that on infrastructure development also there are things that are done. Now infrastructure development here becomes very very crucial, you have to understand, because uh, nanotechnology infrastructure cost is very high. Something as simple as scanning tunneling microscope, which is very essential for doing any kind of study, any kind of research in nanotechnology, is very costly. A single microscope can cost between 6 lakhs to 10 lakhs, if not more. So that's why this is not going to be possible for a single, let's say, scientist, one scientist, or just a bunch of scientists to be able to afford everything. Similarly, even if, let's say, it comes to, even if you uh, think of IPRs, the intellectual property rights, getting the patents, etc., the licenses to work on something also is very, very costly. So, overall, because it's a new technology and for many of the private companies, it is very, very crucial. That is where we see that the cost of using nanotechnology right now is very, very uh, costly. So that's why infrastructure development becomes important. Then nano applications and technology development programs. Now this is something that becomes very very crucial, because with the help of this, what the government of India has tried is that any project that is being undertaken as a part of nanotechnology should work according to the requirements of daily lives and the requirements of industries. That if industries need something, then people who are doing their research in nanotechnology, they should try to provide a real world solution. So instead of, let's say, uh, just having just doing nanotechnology research, what needs to be done is that uh, research should have a motive. Research should be done according to the requirements, and this is what this entire thing is about. So that's why we see that this was taken. Then human resource development. Now human resource development basically is about the fact that we need more people who are associated with the field of nanotechnology, scientists, engineers, even lawyers, for example, who can look after the patents or the Indian patents that are being generated in the field of nanotechnology in India. So that's why in this particular scenario, it becomes very, very crucial to understand that the role that nanotechnology, the role that human resource development will play in the field of nanotechnology, the education of the scientists and engineers and their training and all these things also become a part of this. Then international collaborations basically is about uh, the scientists, the organization of joint workshops and conferences, knowledge sharing in a manner, you can say. Whenever the seminars would happen, the Indian scientists would go and attend those seminars. And similarly, knowledge sharing, maybe collaborative projects will be taken with the scientists of certain countries. So these kind of efforts. So what we see is that initially all these efforts were taken as a part of the 11th 5-year plan between 2007 to 2012. But then because of the success that we started seeing in the field of nanotechnology, the growth that we started seeing in the field of nanotechnology, that compelled us to also include it for another year. And that is where we see that uh, we extended it to the 12th 5-year plan as well, where it was taken as a part for, it was extended for another 5 years. So between 2007 to 2017, we see that this nano mission it ran. Now because of the successes that we have seen there today, if you look at the academic papers that have been published in the field of nanotechnology, you'll see that India is among the top 3 countries. US has the highest number of papers published in nanotechnology, followed by China, and then followed by India. So India has the third highest number of research papers that have been published in the field of nanotechnology. So that's why that tells you about the way the growth that has been very very fast in the field of nanotechnology uh, in India. So that's why it is very, very crucial. Now, lastly, also coming to some of the challenges in India. So, first thing that we need if we want better growth in India, although we just discussed about nano mission and how nano mission has been important, but at the same time, it's also very important to understand that although nano mission has worked well, but we still haven't done a lot in nanotechnology. Still all the research that we have done has been very primitive research, and we haven't been able to, you can say, be at the same stage as many of the western countries or even eastern countries like China, Japan, Korea, that is South Korea, Russia, etc. So that's why we see that there's scope for a lot of improvement here. So first we have to improve on the efficiency, reliability, and the safety environments of nanotechnology and everything related to uh, nanotechnology in India. Similarly, when we look at nanotechnology, the cost of acquisition of IPRs, the nanotechnology infrastructure, etc., is also very, very high. So that also makes a lot of difference. That also creates a lot of problems. Then safety, health, and environmental risks to the consumers and the public, that also needs to be addressed while commercializing nanotechnology. And where these problems lie, we'll also discuss in the next slide that I'm going to take. Then poor lab firm integration. So this basically means that there is lack of coordination between the industrial requirements and the research and development. So that is what we mean by poor lab firm integration. Then one more problem also is the interdisciplinary nature of nanotechnology and the scope of application being biggest one of the biggest challenges. Now what we understand is that why we are saying that interdisciplinary nature is a problem. It becomes a problem because when it comes to nanotechnology, nanotechnology is something that doesn't function on its own, or it's not independent of other sectors. What do I mean? Just let's take an example: space technology. If let's say there's a scientist who belongs to space technology, they need not have a lot of in-depth knowledge of biotechnology to be a good scientist or engineer in space sector. Similarly, somebody who is working in the field of biotechnology need not be very good with space technology to be a very good scientist or an engineer. But when it comes to nanotechnology, nanotechnology is an application based science, correct? So you apply nanotechnology in various fields. You apply nanotechnology to space sector. You apply nanotechnology in biotechnology. You apply nanotechnology in the healthcare sector, correct? So that's where nanotechnology is getting applied in all these various sectors. So that basically is what we mean here. And then lastly, the regulatory capacity, information asymmetry, and the absence of interagency coordination. Now this, why this is a problem, because many times we see that the various bodies, organizations, various ministries even, they work individually, right? They work individually, they don't really work on let's say in coordination with each other. Let's take an example. We have Ministry of Science and Technology, and we also have Ministry of IT and electronics. But what you will see is that many of the projects that are taken for, or many of the initiatives taken in the field of nanotechnology, they are being headed by Ministry of Science and Technology, and some are being done by Ministry of IT and electronics, and many a times they are just being done independently. So one thing that should have happened here is that these two ministries should have coordinated and then worked on a certain project. But sometimes, or rather a lot of times, we see that these kind of coordinations, they do not happen well, and that also creates one of the issues when it comes to nanotechnology innovations in India. And that's why it brings us also to the concerns related to nanotechnology. Now when we look at nanotechnology today, there are some of the areas of concern that we have. So for example, concerns related to nano pollution. Now, when we say nano pollution, what we mean is that a lot of these nanoparticles, they can be dangerous. They can lead to pollution, and that's why they can be bad for human health and also for the environmental health. So, so that's why we have to understand that these nanoparticles, many a times, they can create a problem. And now what happens is, for example, these are very small particles, right? And because these are small particles, they can very easily get inside our system and get stuck somewhere in the system. For example, they can deposit in the lungs, and they can cause lung problems maybe years later, because these are very small particles and they would not show an infection overnight, or even in a week or a month. No, it might so happen that they start showing their effects 10 years later or 5 years later, and so on. So that's why there are all these issues that can happen, and that is where the concern lies with regard to nanotechnology. Then, nano arms race. Now this, what we see is that a lot of countries, they have been working on using nanotechnology for weaponry. So that also can be dangerous for the future of defense. Similarly, it is very, very expensive. For example, we discussed about the QLEDs and the OLEDs, etc. And you just go and see, you'll find that all these technologies, wherever they are costly. Foldable displays, they are costly. So that's why it is something that right now remains expensive. Even in the case of medical field also, you'll find that they are right now expensive. Then buckyballs in fish. Now what we have seen is that we have observed that uh, we have found traces of buckyballs or fullerenes. We have found traces of fullerenes in fish. Now, this is also very dangerous, because having fullerenes in fish also means that we would not be that these are becoming a part of the entire food chain, because fish would have consumed something, fish would be consumed by some other animal. So in that case, what happens is that all these nanoparticles, they are becoming a part of the food chain. So that's why they lead to uh, two environmental concepts that we know of. One, bio accumulation, and bio magnification. All right. So bio accumulation and bio magnification. So these are two ways in which they can be harmful. So now just understand these two concepts, and I'm sure that these are concepts that you'll also learn when you when your environment and ecology classes start. So that's why bioaccumulation and biomagnification can be dangerous. Now, when it comes to understanding of these two uh, concepts, just understand what we mean by bioaccumulation and what we mean by biomagnification. So, bioaccumulation, first of all, this basically is the process by which we see that there is an accumulation of toxins in an organism over time. So that is called as bioaccumulation. So what happens is that in one species only, when we are talking about only fish, so in the fish species, when let's say a lot of accumulation of these toxins happen, that is called as bioaccumulation. And then after that we have biomagnification. Now biomagnification basically is where these kind of toxins, they will keep on magnifying when you move from one trophic level to another. All right, when you move from one trophic level to another. So that's why what we see is that there will be an increase in the concentration of the toxic substances in organisms in each successive levels of the food chain. As you move from the first trophic level to the second, from second to the third, you'll see that there will be an increase in concentration of the toxic elements, and that is what is called as biomagnification. So bioaccumulation is accumulation of toxins within an organism. All right, accumulation of toxins within an organism. And when it comes to biomagnification, biomagnification basically is increase in concentration of toxins at each successive trophic level. So that is what we mean. So one basically is when it comes to biomagnification, it is when the concentration is increasing in every other, or let's say every second, I mean in the upper trophic levels. So and bioaccumulation within that species itself. Then titanium dioxide is sunscreen. Now, titanium dioxide is something that is used in the sunscreens, and titanium dioxide help in, you can say, uh, the reflection, the reflecting back of the sun's rays, the UV light. Now, titanium dioxide, initially we saw that it was being used in larger concentration in making these sunscreens. But then later it was found that titanium dioxide can be carcinogenic, meaning that it can lead to cancer, specifically skin cancer. And then there was an experiment that was done on the poor mice, and in those mice, when they increased the concentration of titanium dioxide, they saw that there was tissue disintegration happening, and later it was becoming carcinogenic in these mice. So that is when we saw that there was uh, a limit put to how much of titanium dioxide can be used in sunscreens. So that's why there are all these things that are related to the titanium dioxide, and that is one of the problems also, that many a times when it comes to these you can say newer segments, or when it comes to the new uh, technologies, many a times what we don't realize is that initially we are only having a one dimensional approach. All right, we are just having a one dimensional approach where we are just thinking of all the positives, where we are thinking of all the ways in which this technology can be useful for us. But then very soon we realize that everything is not as useful as we thought, and there are a lot of issues related to these kind of technologies as well that we see from time to time. So that's why we need to be very aware of all that. Then cadmium selenide nanoparticles, which lead to cadmium poisoning. Now this happens in quantum dots, because quantum dots use calcium selenide nanoparticles. So that's why quantum dots would have these problems. So that is again another part of the issue that we see. So and now we know that quantum dots are being used everywhere, I mean especially in electronics. So if I'm saying that quantum or let's say QLEDs are going to give you better contrast in colors, at the same time the same QLEDs also have quantum dots which can lead to cadmium poisoning. So there are all these things that people need to be aware of as well. And that's why lack of risk analysis and regulations, it becomes a very crucial challenge in nanotechnology right now. That is where we need to improve, you can say, in getting things under control. So from these aspects also, there are a couple of questions that have been asked by UPSC. Just read this question. It's a fairly simple question to answer. Please read the question and I'll launch the poll for you. Yeah, please mark your answers. Good. 72% of you have marked D, which is the correct answer. So let me discuss this. There is some concern regarding nanoparticles of some chemical elements that are used by the industry in the manufacture of various products. Why? First, they can accumulate in the environment and contaminate water and soil. We discussed that they lead to nano pollution. So this is correct. They can enter the food chains. We discussed, right? That they can lead to biomagnification. So this is what it means, that they can lead to biomagnification. So this is also correct. They can trigger the production of free radicals. Now, what are these free radicals? Free radicals basically you can say are like ions or charged particles. Now, what is the problem with free radicals? What is the problem with free radicals? The problem that lies with free radicals is that free radicals, they can be harmful for our body. The production of free radicals in the body can be harmful. So that they can basically lead to cellular damage, they can lead to tissue damage. So that's why just understand that they can be bad for our health. So that's why what happens is that they can actually lead to the, you can say, they can damage the cells. In simple terms, I would say that they can damage the cells, and that's why they can lead to degenerative diseases. We'll discuss about degenerative diseases later. But even diseases like cancer, they can lead to diseases like cancer or arthritis, or even autoimmune diseases, and all these kind of things can happen because of free radicals. So that's why they can be very, very dangerous. So leads to various diseases. And do you know what we need? What we need to control the production of free radicals in the body? It's a term that I'm sure that everybody has seen or heard of. Do you know what do we use to control free radicals? What helps in controlling free radicals? Anyone who can answer? It's a term that you hear uh, in a lot of advertisements also. Let me say this. Yeah, Neha, you are correct. Antioxidants. Antioxidants basically they are said to be radical scavengers. All right, they are said to be radical scavengers. They are said to be radical scavengers, and that's why they can reduce the damage caused by the free radicals or the oxidation process in our body. They can help against the oxidative stress that develops in our body. So that's why antioxidants become very, very crucial here, and that's why they are said to be very good radical scavengers. And if you remember, with fullerenes we had discussed that they are very good radical scavengers. All right, so fullerenes actually can be used in these cases also, and fullerenes basically are made, they can be derived from carbon soot or carbon particles. So that's why the charcoal in your face wash, the charcoal in your sunscreens and everywhere. I don't know wherever your charcoal is. So charcoal is said to be a very good antioxidant against the production of free radical. But it doesn't mean that you need these externally. Many of the fruits and vegetables, they are very good sources of antioxidants, and we need to have enough of them so that a good amount of antioxidants are there in our body to take care of any kind of free radical production that might happen in the body. You don't really need charcoal for that. So that's why even this is correct. So correct answer will be D. That is 1, 2, and 3. Then Just read this question as well. This was asked in your 2022 paper. It's again a simple question. Wow. 92% of you have marked D, which is the correct answer. Wonderful. So, first statement says, other than those made by humans, nanoparticles do not exist in nature. This is wrong. First, it's an extreme statement that we are saying that they do not exist in nature. If you remember, we discussed that fullerenes were discovered, graphene was discovered, quantum dots were discovered. So if something is discovered, it means that it exists, and we have found them. So that's why it does exist in the nature, right? So about quantum dots, about fullerenes, about graphene, about everything we discussed, that they were all discovered. So statement number one definitely is wrong. Statement 2, nanoparticles of some metallic oxides are used in the manufacture of some cosmetics. We discussed just now about titanium dioxide. So titanium dioxide is a metallic oxides used in manufacture of some cosmetics. What cosmetics? Sunscreens. So this is correct. So titanium dioxide is an example. Third is nanoparticles of some commercial products which enter the environment are unsafe for humans. So we discussed about the fact that they lead to bioaccumulation and biomagnification in the environment. They cause nano pollution. So say third statement also is correct. So correct answer that's why will be D. That is only 2 and 3. Now, lastly, also coming to a couple of questions that have been asked in the mains examination regarding nanotechnology. The first question, what do you understand by nanotechnology and how is it helping in the health sector? So, when it comes to the health sector and how nanotechnology helps in the health sector, understand this that this question can be a very easy pitfall when you are writing this answer. How? Do you see that there are two parts to this question? There are two questions here. First question is, what do you understand by nanotechnology? And then the second question is, how is it helping in the health sector? So this is one of, I would say, very common mistakes that many candidates do. That your entire concentration, your entire focus will be here, health sector. And what happens is that you write a brief introduction about nanotechnology and so on, and you keep writing about health sector. If let's say the question was, how does nanotechnology help in the health sector? Then you give that basic introduction to nanotechnology and write everything about health sector. But that's not the case in this question. This is explicitly asking you, what do you understand by nanotechnology? So you should write about nanotechnology as well. Write about what is nanotechnology, the importance of nanotechnology, the research and development happening in nanotechnology. So give it some time. So I would break it down into 40 words for nanotechnology, and then let's say around 70 to 80 words, let's say up to 80 words for health sector, and then almost 30 words for conclusion. So in this manner I would divide if this kind of question comes. Otherwise, if it was directly asking you how does nanotechnology help in the health sector, then in that case, this 80 becomes 100 and the 40 becomes 20. So that is how you would make the adjustments based on what kind of question has been asked and how the question has been asked, how you are expected to answer this question. Right? Then the second question. Why is nanotechnology one of the key technologies of the 21st century? Describe the salient features of Indian government's mission on nanoscience and technology and the scope of its application in the development process of the country. So here again there are two questions, but this time explicitly you have two questions. So first is, why is nanotechnology one of the key technologies of the 21st century? Because of the potential. We discussed about a lot of things in the introduction itself, that how nanotechnology is so beautiful and why it can completely change around things, and there are so many areas where we see the potential use of nanotechnology in one way or the other. So that is precisely what has to be written in this answer. Then describe the salient features of Indian government's mission on nanoscience and technology and scope of its application. So again, this is something which is completely based on nano mission. So we discussed extensively about nano mission as well. So that is what the question is based upon. So again, a simple question that can be answered very easily from whatever we have discussed. Now, lastly, I have just one assignment question for you. There is this very wonderful article that had come in the Hindu newspaper. Is India missing the graphene bus? So there is the link also. If you see the PDF has the link. You just click on that link. It will take you to the required article. Just read that article. I just really want you to read that article and answer this question based on that article. So you don't answer it just like that. You read this article and then answer this question. That given the transformative potential of graphene in various sectors and its growing global market, critically analyze the steps India has taken in the field of graphene research and production. Discuss the importance of establishing a national graphene mission for India, drawing comparisons with global leaders in graphene technology. Evaluate the potential benefits and challenges of such a mission, considering India's current standing in the graphene landscape. Now, out of all these questions, there are three questions that are there in this, right? This is one, this is two, this is three, right? So there are three questions that are there, and actually any one of these three or all the three together can be asked in your paper. And it's a very very important article, a very good article to read. It's not something that you will not understand while reading. It's, I mean, everything that we have covered after that, it should not be difficult for you to read this article. So please go and read this article and answer this question based on that, and then submit it. Either submit it to me directly if you want, at rashesh.kumar@byju's.com, or you can also submit it to islive@byju's.com or targetis@byju's.com. You use any one of the three emails and please submit this answer. But read this one. This is, I would say, a homework for you. That read this article and answer this question. So this brings us to the end of this chapter. If you have any questions related to whatever we have discussed in the last 1 hour, please let me know. I'll discuss this and then only we'll move on to our next chapter. Biomagnification, again in simple way. See, biomagnification, understand what we are saying, that you know the basics, that for example we know that the plants are eaten by animals, correct? Plants will be consumed by animals, and then these small, let's say smaller animals, right? Smaller animals, and these smaller animals will be consumed by bigger animals. This is what happens. And what do we call this? This is something that we call as food chain, correct? This is what we call as food chain. And these are also called as trophic levels, that this is trophic level 1, this is trophic level 2, this is trophic level 3, and so on. Now biomagnification says that, let's say in the tree there are some toxic elements, all right? There are some toxic elements. So what's happening is that there are animals which are consuming all these trees. So from a few trees there are a bunch of animals which are eating this. So what happens is that the toxic elements are increasing or magnifying. Similarly, when the larger animals are consuming these animals, they would also consume the same toxins. So what happens is that the toxicity level is increasing at each and every trophic level. So this is called as biomagnification. White PPTs, about the white PPTs, I have already asked the team to provide. I'm sure that because they would have to convert my PPTs into white colored PPTs and send it to you. So I'm sure that in a couple of days that would happen and you'll get all the white colored PPTs within a couple of days. Nano wire, nano flare. See, nano wires basically are very small sized wires, wires which have a size of, let's say, 1 millimeter or thereabouts. All right. They do not have a very big size. And they can be used in electronics, they can be used in computer storage, and all these things they can be used in. So that's why these are nano wires and nano flares. Nano flares, you can say these are like small devices that can be used in detection of cellular structures, in detection of mRNA or DNA structures and all that. So that is what we mean by nano flare. What is nanotechnology in short? See, nanotechnology in very simple way, what we can say is that nanotechnology is the technology of the small particles, the tiny particles. So tiny particles of the order of 1 nanometer or thereabouts, because that is the molecular level, that is where the molecules are formed. That is the first level of formation of molecules. So that is basically what we mean by nanotechnology. Quantum dots, again, quantum dots, just remember that these are very small particles which are made of cadmium selenide particles, and these particles have very good optical properties which are useful in various different fields. They are useful in various different fields altogether. So that is what they are. Today the class time is 2 hours or 3 hours. No, class timing today is 2 hours because 8:30 onwards I also have the science and technology webinar that I'm going to take for you. So class timings for the regular classes will be till 8 o'clock, and 8:30 onwards will begin with the science and technology webinar. Could you explain me fullerenes? See, fullerenes basically are, you can say, small spherical particles, and these are like carbon particles. For example, let's say when you burn carbon, like let's say burning of coal. So burning of coal will produce black colored smoke, and that black colored smoke has carbon particles which are called as carbon soot, SWOT, carbon soot. So from that carbon soot, we can actually get small spherical carbon particles which are called as fullerenes. What is drug delivery? Drug delivery is the delivery of the drug, meaning to ensure that the required medicine reaches the part of our body where it is supposed to reach. So that is what we call as drug delivery. All right. So for example, let's say when you take a medicine, so medicine is supposed to reach a certain part of your body, maybe your stomach, maybe certain muscles, correct? So that is called as drug delivery. So targeted drug delivery can be done with the help of nanotechnology. Optical fiber nanoparticle use. I Can you reframe your question? So rephrase your question. I would understand what you mean to ask better. Are nanocarbon tubes used in bulletproof windows? They can be used. All right, they can be used because they can enhance the strength of material. We already are looking towards making bulletproof clothing with the help of carbon nanotubes. So it's possible that it can be done. Carbon nanotubes. See, carbon nanotubes is nothing but carbon nanotubes are nothing but cylindrical structures made of carbon particles, and they are very strong structures. ऑप्टिकल फाइबर्स में नैनो पार्टिकल्स यूज होते हैं? नो. Optical fibers basically work on a very different principle. Optical fibers, they work on the principle of total internal reflection. So that's a different concept, and the wires are made in a manner that total internal reflection is made possible in those optical fibers. Can I say drawing a line on paper by pencil is graphene? It is graphite. All right, it is graphite which is made of graphene. So better way to put it would be that it is made of graphite. I mean that line that you draw is graphite line, but graphite is made of graphene. Number division of these questions. Just take it as a simple, a direct question of 250 words. 250 words and 15 marks for this entire segment. What is personalized medicine? So personalized medicine is something that you can say where we are looking towards a person, and the biological makeup of that person and the genetic makeup of the person, and depending on that we are providing the medicines. Now why is this important? Because in many of the cases, for example, we also discussed about pharmacogenomics, right? We discussed about pharmacogenomics, we discussed about biopharmaceutics altogether. So now in all these cases what we see is that many a times bodies, they respond differently to different medicines, and also genetic structure matters a lot. You'll see news articles where you'll see that certain medicines that were sent from India to African nations or sent from India to Europe, uh, it had some kind of toxicity. It did not work for that population. It did not give the required respite. But the same medicine is functioning very well in India. So where is the problem? Did we provide you can say inferior medicine? Are we like the Europeans who send inferior products to India and all these countries? So did we do that? The answer is no. The problem many of these cases is that something that has become toxic for certain gene type or certain gene pool is not toxic for some other gene pool. Now many of these medicines that have gone to other nations across the world, they have been tested largely on Indian population. All the field trials, all the medical trials, all the clinical trials, they have happened on the Indian population. So Indian population responded well. So then the same medicine was introduced for the Indian population. But the same medicine, when taken outside India, they did not respond well. All right, they did not respond well, and that is where the problem lies. Many of the cases, that is where the problem lies. For 250 words minimum, how many pages should we write? See, in your mains examination, I don't know whether you have seen the answer booklet or not, but answer booklet will have the question written, and then there will be a couple of blank pages given to you. You cannot exceed that. You cannot ask for extra sheets as you might do in your schools and colleges. You cannot do that. You'll be only given this much space, and you have to do everything in this much space. That's it. You cannot go beyond that. All right. So that's why number of pages, it depends on everybody's handwriting, but you will have to take care of it that in the examination hall there will be a limit to the number of pages that you have. So you have to ensure that you fit in everything that you can in those pages itself. All right. So this is about this chapter. Let's move on to our next chapter, and the next chapter is robotics. Now, robotics as a chapter for your prelims and mains examination, I would say that it is one of the least important chapters that we are going to discuss. Because if you look at the past papers first, the past papers of, let's say, prelims and mains, even if you look at the last 20 years of prelims papers, you will find that not a single question from robotics has been asked in your prelims. In the mains examination, one question has appeared in the last 20 years. So that tells you how important this chapter is. Also, for the future, also, I don't believe that this is going to be a very important chapter. And also understand why. Why do I believe that robotics as a chapter is not as important as many of the other chapters are? The basic problem that lies with robotics is that India has never done anything in robotics. The government of India has not taken any initiative in robotics. There are no financial incentives to work with robotics. There is nothing that we have done to improve the robotics, you can say, penetration in the Indian industries. So that's why even if a company is working with robots, they are on their own. They are not getting any government support. They're not going to get any government uh, finances or nothing as such. So that's why robotics, you can say, in a manner, has never grown in India, and there has been a big fear, the fear of robots will replace humans, that robots, once they become a reality in the Indian industries, they are going to replace the humans, and humans are not going to be employed anymore, and all the employment will be taken away. That is also where what uh, frightens the governments, and nobody wants to take a risk here. That today, let's say a government says that tomorrow we are going to work on a robotics policy and introduce robots in the Indian industries, highly likely that they're going to lose the elections because of the notions that we have with robots. So that's why nobody takes that political risk. None of the parties, whether the ruling party or the opposition party, when this ruling party was the opposition, they also said nothing. When now opposition party, when they were ruling party, they said nothing. So everybody plays safe in these kind of topics because they know that they can these topics can ruin their elections. So unfortunately, this is basically what happens. And also the uh, fear of robots that many of the films have shown us, that these kind of films where the hero can also become a villain. So these kind of problems that we have seen in a lot of Indian films and a lot of foreign films as well. So that's why we see that there are all these concerns regarding robots also. But in reality, robots are very different from what we have perceived it to be, what we have perceived its applications to be, what we have perceived the fears to be. Compared to all that, robots in reality are actually very, very different. So let's try to understand what do we mean by robotics? What exactly is robotics and how exactly do we look at robotics? So we say that it is an interdisciplinary sector of science and engineering dedicated to the design, construction, and use of mechanical robots in various fields. So there are some things that we are going to discuss in this chapter. This chapter is going to be a very small chapter for you compared to many of the other chapters that we have been discussing or we would discuss. Compared to that, robotics is going to be a simpler and a shorter chapter, because although questions have not come and I don't expect questions to come, but it's a part of the syllabus, and anything that's a part of the syllabus we have to read and study them. So robots basically is about the use of mechanical robots. So what do we mean by mechanical robots? When we say that it is a mechanical robot, what is the meaning? The meaning of a mechanical robot is that this is a robot, it is a machine that can follow instructions. It is a machine that will work or act according to the instructions given to it. So how exactly it works, just understand this, that how do we make sure that robotics is how robots basically work in different fields. Now, robots are intelligent machines that sense and manipulate their environment. So what they'll do is that in accordance with the instructions that are provided to the robots will provide the work. They will do the work that is required of them, that has been asked of them. So how exactly that happens? Let's try to understand this. Now, in case of robots, before we move on to understand what a robot is, there is this very crucial thing and very interesting thing, that is three laws of robotics. Isaac Asimov's three laws of robotics. What are these laws? First, who is Isaac Asimov? Isaac Asimov was, you can say, a scientist in the field of biochemistry. wasn't really somebody related to the field of robots as such, but he has done very significant work in writing a lot of papers, a lot of scientific articles, and also a lot of science fiction. There are a few movies also which are based on the science fiction stories that were written by Isaac Asimov. Now, in this way, when we talk about the three laws, he had given three laws, which rather than three laws are more of guidelines. These are more of guidelines. All right, these are more of guidelines for the industries, that if an industry is working with robotics, how should it work? If an industry is doing something in the field of robotics, what should it do? What are the rules and regulations that it should abide by? All these things are there in these three laws. So look at the first law. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. So meaning that a robot should not harm a person, or it should not even let a person to be harmed. So it has to take care of both the things, that neither harm not let it harm. So that's the first law. So don't injure humans, don't allow humans to get injured. Second, robot must obey orders given to it by human beings except when where such orders would conflict with the first law, right? So meaning that a robot has to obey the orders. So if a human has given an order to a robot has to do that work. But if that work is, or if that order is to harm somebody else, is to harm another human being, then don't do it. Then they have to be restrained in their approach. So that is what exactly the second law says. And then there's the third law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or the second law. Meaning that preserve yourself, but not on the account of, or not by harming another human being. By harming another human being, you do not have to preserve yourself. You only have to preserve yourself when you are already preserving the human lives as well. So not at the cost of a human life. So that is something that has been given here. So that's why these three laws. So that's why, see, when we say that these are laws, these are not like laws of physics where everything happens according to these laws, because here anyone can walk over these laws. For example, somebody who is creating a robotic army, for example, let's say a country starts producing or creating a robotic army, then they are basically destroying all these three laws, correct? Neither first law nor second law nor third law is applicable there. So that's why these are more like guidelines for the industries, that if you are somebody who's from the field of robotics, these are the points that you have to keep in mind. These are the points that you have to always stick to, and these are the laws that you should abide by in terms of robots. Now let's try to understand what a robot looks like. This is what a robot is. Yes, it's not necessary that a robot is always a walking and talking machine. A robot is a machine that is working in accordance with all the instructions that have been given to that robot. So, what are the components of robots? So, first, if you see, very, very important, the controller. Now, the controller basically is like the brain of a robot. The controller is like the brain of the robot. So when we say brain of the robot, what we mean is that it has a similar function as our brain does. So for example, our brain controls and coordinates all the activities in the body. Each and everything that happens, voluntary or involuntary, is controlled by the brain. Similarly, the controller will also play the same role, that it will control all the activities of a robot, and it gets its inputs from the sensors. And these sensors, these are like our sense organs. These sensors, these are like the sense organs. So what are the sense organs? What do the sense organs do? There are five sense organs. Which are the sense organs? Which are the sense organs in our body? Quickly tell me, please. Skin, eyes, yes. What else? Ear, nose, tongue. Correct. So eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin. These are the five. These are the five sense organs. And what's the role of sense organs? That sense organs are in contact with the outer environment, right? So everything that the sense organs can see or feel, they will pass on that information to the brain, and brain will take a decision based on all this information that has been passed by the sense organs. So that is the role of sense organs, that provide the information. Similarly, the sensor also does the same role, performs the same role. That sensor will also try to understand what's happening everywhere, and will pass on all this information to the brain, which is the controller, and hence the controller will take its decision. So in this manner, we see that controllers and sense organs would work together. Then after that, there are actuators. Now actuators, we say that these are like the muscles. These are like the muscles of the robot. Now why we say that these are like muscles of the robot? The main reason for that is that when it comes to these actuators, uh, muscles, for example, let's say if we talk about the muscles in our body, muscles would convert the energy. For example, you are eating food and that food is providing you energy. So the energy that you get from food, that is uh, used to get energy, and the energy is used by the body, by the muscle. So muscles basically will convert the food or the nutrition into mechanical movement, into mechanical energy. So for example, even if I'm doing this, so my doing this is happening because of the muscular movements, and those muscular movements are happening because I've eaten something in the morning, and that's why I have that energy. So that energy is getting converted into mechanical movement by the muscles. Similarly, here also actuators play the same role, because there will be a battery supply or an electrical supply that is providing the required energy to the actuator. Providing the exact required energy to the robot. And the energy, the electrical energy that this robot is getting, gets converted into mechanical movement with the help of actuators. So that is the role of actuators, and that is the role of similar to the role of the muscles in our body. Then after that, there are manipulators, and the manipulators are like the let me say that these are like the arms. All right, these are like the arms of the robot. And then lastly, we have the end effector, which is like the hand. So just like how I have an arm and I have a hand, so similar to that, the robot will also have this, because this is something that helps in the movement, right? So arm will help in the movement, and hand will help in picking things and placing things from one place to another. So that's why hand and the arms, they are very similar to how the uh, body also functions. So that is why these become the crucial components. These become crucial components of any given robotic system. So that's why, just to recap all this quickly, you have controllers. So controllers basically, they would coordinate all the movements of this mechanical system. So that's why they are like the brain of the robot. Then and that's why they receive the input from the immediate environment through the various sensors. Then similarly, we have the actuators, and actuators, as we discussed, that these are like the muscles of the robot. It converts the stored energy into movement. So in a manner you can say that these are like the conversion basically is electrical energy to mechanical energy. This is the conversion of energy that's happening inside an actuator. Then after that, we have manipulators. Now, in case of manipulators, as we discussed, that these are like the arms of the robot. So that's why they help in the movement. So they help in moving the materials, parts, tools, or special devices through various motions to provide useful work. So this is how we look at the use of these mechanical systems. And then there are end effectors. So end effectors are like robots' hands. These are like robots' hands. So that's why they help in grasping, lifting, transporting, maneuvering, performing operations, etc. on a workpiece. So all these things will be done by the end effectors. Then after that we have the sensors. So sensors, they would guide the robot's behavior, and that's why they are like the sense organs. They are like the sense organs of the robot. And then lastly, power source. So power source is like the nutrition, the battery source, or even electrical supply if being provided. So any energy source that is being provided to the robot, that is something which is very, very crucial in running the robotic system. So that is how you can say that these are the basic components of any given robotic system. So if we look at the various application areas, we do find that there are a lot of ways in which robots can be useful. So for example, in military applications, so we see that there are military robots. For example, this very robot that you see here is Daksh, that has been developed by DRDO. And this is a search and rescue operation robot. This is search and rescue robot. So this is something that can be useful in search and rescue. So we see that there are various ways in which military applications can be seen. So they actually can help in search and rescue operations, transportations, or even if you want, you can create a robotic army and you can go and attack the enemy. Then in industrial applications, we do see that in various different industries, robots are being used. One of the common robots are this basically robotic arm, which is called as the SCARA. This is the SCARA robotic arm, which is used in various different industries, and it can work in a lot of work pieces. So in welding, assembly, pick up and placing the things, painting, packaging, labeling, product inspection, testing, all these things are where industrial applications of robots can be seen. Then, in agricultural applications, we see that robots can actually be helpful in harvesting, in cloud seeding, soil analysis, weed control, in all these kinds of cases. Now, although in India, we haven't really seen the use of robotics in agriculture, we haven't really seen a lot of usage here. We still see that the Indian agriculture is still very manual intensive, manual labor intensive, but it also employs a lot of people. A bigger chunk of people, they are employed in agriculture or agriculture related aspects. So it's not easy for any government to even think of replacing that workforce with robotic workforce, even if that meets higher efficiency. Even then, we wouldn't see something like that happening very easily. Then in medical science also, we see that there are various robots. There are surgical robots, for example, which can provide with precision surgery today, and this precision surgery can be done with the help of robots. Long hour surgeries can be done with the help of robots. We see that in some of the private hospitals, they already have started bringing in the components of robotics in this particular scenario. Then there are nanorobots, and as we discussed, for the drug delivery or for gene therapy, for all these cases, all these things, we see that it can be very, very crucial, and it can also help a lot in these kind of cases. Then in outer space applications, we see that there are various different ways in which we are looking at how to make the robots or how to use the robots for some kind of outer space applications as well. So for example, do you know this one figure that you see right here? Do you know the name of this robot? Has been in the news constantly. Yes, Shimna, you're correct. Faris, you are correct. Ankita, correct. Radhika, correct. So this one, yeah, Vishant, you are correct. This is Vyomitra. This is Vyomitra, and it's going to be a part of our Gaganyaan mission. It has been designed for the Gaganyaan mission. So for the first time, we'll see that an Indian mission will carry a robot as well on board. So that's why this becomes a very significant robot from that perspective. So that's why application of robotics wise, we do see that there are various different ways in which robotics can be very, very useful. Then, when it comes to the challenges in India, there are certain issues that we see with robotics right now, where we see that India has not been doing very well with robotics. So, first is lack of hardware ecosystem, financial incentives, and lack of required knowledge. Now, understand what I mean by these three. Lack of hardware ecosystem, meaning that we do not really have an infrastructure that we have developed where robotic manufacturing can be done in India. So we are not in a position right now where we can become a manufacturing hub for robots. So that is what we mean by lack of hardware ecosystem. Similarly, there are no financial incentives. As I told you that governments have not made a lot of haven't taken a lot of initiatives, or there aren't a lot of policies in place to help the growth of robotics in India. So that also lacks, and it needs a lot of money, it needs a lot of financial guidance for it to take off. And then lastly, lack of required knowledge. Because when it comes to robots in India, we do see that academically also robotics is not really taught a lot. And unless somebody already is in a specialized sector or a specialized academic branch, you probably do not even read anything about robots. Correct. So, for example, if you think of, let's say, school, or even let's say class 11th and 12th, for even somebody who's taken science combinations in class 11th and 12th, yet you do not really read anything about robots. Correct. You do not read anything about robots, and that is where the problem lies, that unless somebody is already highly specialized, then only they read about robots, otherwise they don't. So that is where the problem lies also. So that's why in India we see today that there are all these challenges of robots, with robotics. Now, if we have to do something with robots, if we have to look at a future with robotics, there are certain things that can be done. And what can be done? First, we have to identify first wave technologies. Now, understand the meaning of first wave technologies. First wave technology means that this is where we are identifying where to start from. Identifying where to start from. So, for example, let's say you think of mobile phone. Today, you see that mobile phone is being used for everything possible, right? But did not start like that. Mobile phone was supposed to be mobile, something that will help you become mobile, right? So that's why you would use mobile phone so that it is useful when you are outside your homes, right? You do not have to, when you have an emergency call or somebody really wants to get in touch with you, then in that case mobile phones. So that was the first requirement of such a device. Correct. So you can say that for mobile phones, establishing wireless communication, establishing wireless voice communication was the first wave technology. So similarly, in the case of robotics also, we have to first identify. We have to identify where to begin from. All right. We have to identify where to begin from, and then only we can proceed further. Then improving the productivity is very, very important. That if with robotics we want to succeed, we have to see ways in which we can do that. We have to find out ways in which that can be done. So we have to see how we can improve the productivity, how we can improve the efficiency. So that becomes important. then developing more of industrial robots, because especially when it comes to the manufacturing sector, manufacturing is where robotics can play a big role. When you look at countries like China, their growth story has been really about manufacturing. And in that, you will see that automation of that manufacturing has done wonders for them. And that is how the Chinese economy has taken up in the last 30, 40 odd years. The way they have grown, manufacturing sector has played a big role in that, and automation of manufacturing has done a lot of good for the Chinese industries. Then providing the academic support, as we discussed that schools and basic knowledge is completely absent. So for example, let's say somebody in space science actually has read something about space technology here and there, the basics in class 8, 9, 10th, 11, 12th, etc. Same goes for other technologies, like even biotechnology for that matter, or nuclear technology, energy, and various different sectors. But when it comes to robotics, although it is such a hugely discussed sector that everybody knows what a robot is, everybody has heard about what a robot is, but academically you've never learned it. So because of that, what happens is that you don't even know whether you are interested in this field or not, whether you want to go into this field or not. But if, let's say, there was, if not anything, just a chapter on robotics in class ninth, basics can be taught in, it's not very difficult, it's not very technical. I mean, look at last half an hour or so, have we discussed anything which is too technical for you to understand? No. So why not these kind of basic points to be discussed in the classes as well, the junior classes like class 9, 10th, or at least in class 11th and 12th? So those things, those kind of academic support have been missing. Then deep specialization in server engineering, electrical, embedded programming, and mechanical engineering. All these things are very, very crucial for the development of robotics in India. And lastly, looking towards the safety and the quality of the produce or the products that are related to robotics. So there are all these things, all these steps, you can say rather, that we have to take if we want the growth of robotics in India. These are some of the things that will become very, very crucial from the perspective of growth of robotics in India. So that's why it's a small chapter, as I told you, that it's not a very big chapter. There aren't a lot of discussions to be done when it comes to this particular chapter. If you have any questions, anything that you want to ask from this chapter. What is disadvantages of charcoal? Also not related to this, but when it comes to charcoal, just understand, disadvantage wise, you have to understand that there are minute particles of carbon that you have in charcoal, which is a pollutant. No doubt it is a pollutant, and that's why charcoal can lead to a lot of pollution. It can lead to air pollution, water pollution, and land pollution all at the same time. Medical use of robotics. Look at two aspects. One, how in surgeries and in medical therapies they can be useful. And secondly, how they can be combined with nanotechnology, and they can be helped, they can be used in doing targeted drug delivery. Like China, why India is not showing much importance to robotics? When we show some importance to robotics, we can also grow like China. See, I don't doubt that. The main problem has been that we have been a very labor intensive country, and a lot of people who are employed, they are employed in labor market. Now what happens is that as you start automating the industries, this is where you also lose out on a lot of manual labor, and a lot of people who are earning their wages, their salaries from these kind of manual labor, they start losing out on their opportunities. So that creates a lot of unemployment related issues in the country. Now the solution is, or solution was, that India should have started working on skill development. The governments had enough time to not just keep running around with their politics. I'm not talking about one single party here, I'm talking about every single party in this country which is present nationally or at state level. that instead of working on their politics, instead of just talking about something that is going to help their politics in short term, they should have taken a long term approach and also looked at how to develop the skills in people so that they are skilled enough to be employed in certain industries in various different sectors. Unfortunately, nobody worried about that. Everybody is worried about how many votes they are going to get in the elections. So that's why that is something that has always kept us behind, uh, running behind all these sectors. Because today directly you cannot start introducing robots, because if you start introducing robots everywhere, it means that people are going to lose jobs and you have done nothing for them. So first you'll have to develop their skills. You have to train them so that they can work along with the robots. There is a concept which is called as cobots. There's a concept called as cobot. Cobot is a concept where we are saying that instead of people getting replaced by robots, people should learn the skills how they can exist with the robots, and how can they become the managers of these robots. So that's the step one, that you develop the skills in people. And what is step one of that one? Academics, where you start teaching first. So unfortunately, those things have not happened, and directly we are trying to jump towards automation, which is bad. Your industrial output might increase, but your labor intensity will start decreasing. So then there is a balance that government of India will have to find between these two things. What is the purpose of Vyom Mitra? So purpose of Vyom Mitra basically is to do basic functions in the Gaganyaan mission. So for example, maintaining the required ambience, ensuring that everything uh, uh, which is a part of the setup in Gaganyaan mission, they should learn how to operate them. So there are all these things, and this is, you can say, the first experiment that we are conducting, and this is the first time towards where we are looking towards a deeper robotic mission of the future, where let's say when we have to take missions which are going to go far across, which are going to cross the limits of the earth, moon, etc., where sending a person is going to be difficult. Sending a person will be completely, you can say, very very harmful for that person. So in all these cases we see that we would do this. Why it uses in cosmetic if it is harmful? Mm, if you're talking about nanotechnology, see, moderation of anything is fine, but excess of everything is bad. And whenever in excess these things are used, then it becomes bad. And in cosmetics also, you know that it's not only about nanotechnology. Just look at the number of chemicals that are used in cosmetics, but they have not been banned. They have to be moderated. The people also have to realize, and the companies also have to take steps. You're talking about charcoal. So I'm not saying charcoal is bad. I'm saying charcoal is bad when you use it in high quantities, larger quantities. When it is being used in moderation, when it is used in smaller quantities, then it is not a problem that we should worry about. But when that concentration starts to rise, that is where the problem lies. Robots could replace people in India in the future. Difficult to say whether something like that will happen or not happen. But yes, it's a possibility that in many of the areas where application of human brain is less and physical activities are more, those kind of areas is where robots can take the charge. Recently in Tamil Nadu, a robot used in teaching. Yes, there was a news about this. Difference between robot and machine. Difference between robot and machine is that robots are following your instructions. Machine basically are not following step by step or second by step, second by second instructions that are being given to them. There are no sensors that are there. They are not working on their own. So all those things are not there in a machine. But so for example, let's say, let me give you examples in a car. So a normal car that we drive, that's a machine, where you are controlling everything. The machine is not controlling things on their own on the basis of the instructions. But a self-driven car, a Tesla car, for example, that is near a robot. That is more of a robot, because that is following instructions based on already everything that has been fed. So that, you can say, is a basic difference between a robot versus a machine. Basic difference between graphite and graphene is that graphite is made of graphene. Graphene is the basic building block of graphite. How China is managing in that scenario the labor problem? See, what China has done is that the growth of industries have happened significantly, and they have been gradually happening for the last 40 odd years. So they took a step at the time when industries were growing, when robots had not even started growing. And they started doing that at that point of time itself. And they have a huge market that they have. They are global suppliers today, right? In manufacturing, they are global suppliers today. You look at so many products here and there in India, you look at the imports that we do from China, you'll see that there are huge imports that we are doing in various different industries which are related to directly or indirectly manufacturing. So they developed those industries, and gradually, as the technology is developed, they kept on adapting to that technology, and they also helped their population in also adapting to that technology. So that's why they did not really face that problem. Although, having said that, when you look at the unemployment problem in China today, you'll see that it has a very huge unemployment problem. Uh, whatever unemployment problems we talk about in case of our country in India, compared to that, China has a bigger unemployment problem in the current scenario. So but that has a lot of different other angles also, which has created these kind of environments where people have gotten unemployed, or they have not been employed properly. What is the main criteria of academic support in India? Criteria, there's no such criteria as such, just that some of the things that could have been in curriculum, they have to be more pragmatic in approach when it comes to the adapting to curriculum requirements. So for example, something that have been done in the recent past, like for artificial intelligence, now in class ninth, CBSE has introduced artificial intelligence as an elective subject, but the same could have been done with robotics also. And if you want to focus on something, you will have to grow that in the young minds first. So that is where the academic, you can say, curriculum has to be more proactive, which unfortunately in many of the cases is not the case. Hmm. Now our next chapter is artificial intelligence. I don't know how much time we have. Right now it is 7:48. How is AI different from robotics? You'll just understand that when we discuss this chapter, because but I can take up this chapter only for like not more than 10 minutes. So it's better if let's start this chapter tomorrow, because we are left with artificial intelligence. I mean, two small chapters that I have here. One is artificial intelligence, and then disease and defense. These three chapters we'll do first, and these three chapters will keep for tomorrow. All right. Now, I'll just announcement for you, an announcement for you that uh, I'll because I need some extra time, because unfortunately I could not take classes as regularly as I would have wanted. So there are some classes which are remaining. Uh, Essentially, I'll tell you the names of the chapters which are left out: artificial intelligence, after that disease, defense. These are three small chapters, and then IT and communication, which is a big chapter, and then intellectual property rights, which is fairly, you can say, a 2 hour long chapter. So these are five chapters left, out of which three chapters are very small chapters, which probably will be able to do tomorrow itself on Friday. and then the rest 2 days we will take for IT and communication and for IPR. So I will take extra classes for you on Saturday and Sunday. All right. I think next subject, I am not sure what the next subject is. It's either environment or polity. One of the two subjects is starting next. But before that Monday and the next subject that starts, I want to take these two extra classes on Saturday and Sunday, and I want to complete this portion which are remaining right now. All right, so this is basically what I'll do. I'll take two extra classes, so that's why I'm announcing it right away, right now, so that you also be prepared, please. And we'll take the classes at the same time. Uh, I also actually wanted to know about your routine on Saturdays, whether I can take a morning class on Saturday or not, because I would be available that on Saturdays. But I wanted to know about you. Is there somebody who will face a problem if, let's say, if I take a Saturday morning class and I extend it on a Saturday? Uh, is there somebody who is going to face any problem if I take a morning class instead of evening? Otherwise, I can take at any time of the day. That is not a problem for me. But you tell me first, if there is somebody who will not be able to attend the class. Let's say if I start at 10 a.m. itself. In the morning, I start at 10 a.m. and I take a 3.5 hour class so that I can extend and I can complete everything. Because, but some of you are going to face problems. Anyway, so let's be regular with our timings itself. All right, let me take the class at in the evening itself, and I'll do that. So okay, so because I see that many of you have written that for you attending a morning class will not be possible, that's okay. Then we'll continue with the classes as our normal timings are. I'll start at 5 o'clock itself as usual. All right, so let's end with pause our classes here itself. Artificial intelligence onwards will start in the next class, that is tomorrow. All right, so let's meet back at 8:30, and I'll take up the current affairs topic of last 1 month. I had taken one class at the end of last month. From there on, all the leftover topics and some of the new topics is what we'll discuss in the webinar that starts at 8:30. All right. Until then, we'll meet back at 8:30. I hope that you please come back and attend all those sessions as well. Until then, thank you very much for being here in this class. We'll meet back tomorrow with the regular classes at the same time at 5 o'clock. Thank you.